want to welcome everybody to the August I Am Piscataway. This month we've had several segments to show, including 3 guests, Ward 1 Councilman Frank Uhrin. We also have the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Frank Ranelli for Piscataway Township, and the Rutgers head football coach, Greg Schiano. I want to welcome the viewership back. I'm out here today with our Councilman Frank Uhrin from Ward 1, and we happen to be standing in the middle of Cedarwood Avenue over in the heart of the Arbor section of Piscataway Township. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the road reconstruction that's going on in this general neighborhood, and then we're going to stop over by Mervyn Alexander Park and Leslie to talk about some of the improvements that are going to take place over in that neighborhood. So Frank, long time coming,
Yes,
under design for this area. As folks know, we have about 40 plus streets under reconstruction as we speak. For the last 2 years, a lot of work going on at this point. So this section right now, on the entire length of Cedarwood Avenue, is ultimately going to get reconstructed. However, we have some challenges out here. And as Frank, you want to talk about the upper half there? Or?
Well, they're doing the sidewalks and the curbing, and they're going to come on down, and it's all going to be the same down here.
Yeah. So basically, in essence, we split the contract in half out here because right here, where we're standing in front of this house, we have 2 issues going. So right here, we replaced the sanitary sewer line a year and a half ago. However, there was a glitch. The contractor, there wasn't an exact pitch, so now it has to be redug up and reinstalled again. So this court settlement,
and that's what they're working on down there.
And that's what the work they're doing, starting down here. So you have 2 different companies doing work out here. So basically, one's going to fix the sanitary sewer line out here that should have been installed correctly the first time, and the second one is rebuilding new Cedarwood Avenue to what eventually the whole street's going to look like. Some curbs, sidewalks, and out to New Brunswick Avenue. And the key in this area is we can't do this half section of Cedarwood Avenue yet because we have to wait till the sanitary sewers. But more importantly is there's a very large storm drain system that encompasses this whole area of Arbor from, say, West 7th over to New Brunswick Avenue and to over to down to Glenwood Drive and backing up to the park. So it collects all the storm drain water and then ultimately ends up in the thing. So that storm drain pipe is probably 70 to 75 years old. So we're going to have to slip line that, and it's a very challenging job because it goes through a lot of people's backyards, front yards, so it's not your normal storm drain system that goes down the middle of the street. This one meanders all over through people's yards. So that does create some both legal engineering challenges for us. But I just want the folks that live on Cedarwood, just be patient after the sewer line is installed. We're going to work on the storm drain system for the area. And then once that's finished, we'll put the next half of the street out. Yeah. So the Councilman Uhrin and I are standing behind a pile of Belgian block, and one of the questions that the Councilman and I normally get is why are you installing Belgian block all over the place? Well, the simple of the matter is that, believe it or not, a lot of times when we bid these full-blown reconstruction jobs out, the Belgian block is a lot cheaper to install than regular 10-foot sections of curbing. And the significance of it is that if one of the blocks goes bad, you're just replacing a tooth, whereas for maintenance purposes, whereas if on a regular curb and gutter, you're replacing a 10-foot section of curbing, which ends up costing more money. But more importantly, when we throw road salt down during the winter, during snow removal operations, the salt doesn't really affect the Belgian block versus the concrete aprons and driveways. So that's why we try to now, if there's a portion that has Belgian block curbing, we'll go and install that. Or if it has no curbing, meaning the street, we'll install Belgian block curbing, because it's a lot easier for DPW to maintain. So those are for those folks that live off of Cedarwood, basically we can't touch your streets yet until the drainage system has been resolved. And then I know Councilman Uhrin has had my ear, as well as several of the other council members, about reconstructing these streets. However, we are under engineering design over in this area of Arbor. We have Meister Street, Albert Street, that are under engineering design, and it's halfway through the design stage. And I think we're getting proposals for Ranelli as the next big street over in this area to start the engineering work. So over the next 4 to 5 years, I just want people to be patient out here. These, as you all know, if you live out here in this section of Arbor, you never had true roadways out here. Yeah. This is one of the oldest sections in Piscataway, so just be patient. We're spending a lot of money, a lot of your tax dollars out here to do public improvements, so they got to last 30 to 40 years. So when they're installed, we want to make sure they're installed correctly the first time. So with that, we're going to take a walk over to Leslie Avenue, over in that area where we're doing a bunch of reconstruction of streets over there. Okay, I'm back out here with Ward 1 Councilman Frank Uhrin, and we're at the intersection of Ann and Leslie Avenue, where the township governing body had awarded a reconstruction contract out for these 2 streets. This is another older area of the Arbor where they never had true streets out here. You know, basically, in a standard street, it'll be 30-foot cartway, curbing on both sides. I think they're going down a foot, Councilman, to reconstruct the roadway bed. And I think, Councilman, you had a question about some of the sidewalks?
Yeah, are they doing both sides of Ann Street here?
No, not unfortunately they're not. They're only going to be able to, the engineering design plan only called for one side because they had problems with trying to fit sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. So at least where their existing sidewalk, they're going to keep it uniform on that side. And the same goes for Leslie too. There's only going to be sidewalks on one side. So because of the stormwater regs and stuff like that, that would have triggered a whole different set of engineering plans. So they decided that they're able to fit in sidewalks on one side of each road. So at least it'll allow some safe, passage of residents out here.
I see the water company was out there.
Well, I got to give New Jersey American Water credit. They've had these design plans since 2016. So they did come out as part of their capital program and did reinstall all new water lines and water services. As the TV station is going to get some pictures of all the trenches cut open. So that's from the water company. The only large challenge we're going to have out here is because when PSE&G came in 2 years ago and upgraded all their gas mains in this area, unfortunately they installed the gas mains too shallow. It should have been 4 feet down. So now what happens is the contractor did test pits out here in the roadway. So when we're going to reinstall the storm drain system out here, it means both the gas lines and the storm system are in conflict with each other. So we're in the process between our engineering department, our outside consultant, my office, contacting PSE&G to try to expedite this somehow or another, because if they don't get out here and do it, we're going to lose the construction season, unfortunately, this year for this area. But that's one contract. We have a second contract going out, and we're going to double check because we're assuming that PS made the same mistake on the other 2 streets, on Maple and Short Street. So before we let that contract out, we're going to make sure PS installed it correctly, and while they're out here to have them redo those other streets out there. So basically this little quadrant area near Mervyn Alexander Park will all have been reconstructed out here, because this is like the very far reaches of Piscataway here. You go another less than 100 yards, you're in the city of Plainfield, actually down in dead end of the street. So this is literally the far reaches of Piscataway, northerly section of Piscataway. So for all the residents that live out in these 4 streets out here off of Rock Avenue, we're just asking you to be patient. As soon as the utility companies are out of the way, contractor will be in here to reconstruct it. Best case scenario now, if it's maybe won't be finished until summer of next year now, I'm thinking. if it gets delayed another 4 months. So
What's with all the stakes too, Brian?
these are all to show the curb lines
Okay.
out here. You know, it's where it says FC, that means front of curb. So the contractor came out here and staked them where all the curb work's going. So, which, you know, we obviously don't want these up over the winter, so that's why we'd rather see the project getting underway. But more importantly, this will actually allow for safe passage for the residents to get down to the neighborhood of Mervyn Alexander Park.
Yeah.
So
Park's right down the street.
yes, half a block away.
Yeah.
So we look forward to seeing some of the nice improvements out here, as well as other areas of Ward 1.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to take it back to the studio. I want to welcome our viewership back, and in studio we're fortunate enough to have the Superintendent of Piscataway School Systems, Dr. Frank Ranelli, here. I know this taping is taking place here at the end of July, obviously for the August show, which is airing currently. Dr. Ranelli, September's not too far off. We're like about 6 weeks away and change. And I know there's probably a lot of parents out there who obviously have school children, wondering what September may look like for their children going to school, considering what happened in the 2020 versus 2021 school year, now the 2021-2022 school year. So maybe you can give a little bit of overview of what you believe and the board members believe September, the first week of September may look like, and moving forward for at least for the first couple of quarters of the year.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the families and the students for their flexibility, their patience, their understanding. This was all very uncertain to everyone, and yeah, we had to make changes on the fly and be very flexible ourselves. So I really appreciate the flexibility and the understanding, knowing that we put the safety of our community members, our parents, our students, and our staff first. So I appreciate that. So September, right? We are at the end of July, Mayor, as you just said, and we are planning on, as directed by the Department of Education, a full 100% in-person opening. Okay. So that's what we're getting ready for. So as we had a certain percent of our students on hybrid last year, and they were allowed to remain to do so, we're directed by the Department of Education to plan for a full opening in September. So that means all of our students back in the buildings, all of our classrooms full. We're taking the precautions that we need to under the guidance that we have. And that's what the plan is for the upcoming school year as we sit here the day we're taping here. The first couple of days, we've had some administrative meetings over the summer, obviously, and the sort of the directive to the principals, and they were well on board with this, is to take the first couple of days to really go over some protocols. Try to ease as much anxiety as anybody might have as possible. Go over the rules of the hallway moving, of the cafeteria, of the entering the building from the next day on, how dismissal is going to look, how the bathrooms are going to operate, to try to keep people as socially distant as possible, which is in the guidance as well. So the first couple of days, I would expect your students to come home, parents, and really tell you that the teachers went over what what we should expect and to try to ease as much anxiety as possible.
And I think it's critical that the parents out there realize that you're only giving the information out as of that moment.
Sure.
What is the perception either through the Department of Education or the State Department of Health? So there's a lot of these decisions are not made in a vacuum.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And a lot of times what is put in the media, what is put in the paper, or what is said at a press conference is either adjusted or clarified by the Department of Ed. We take direct instruction. I'm glad you brought that up. We take direct instruction from the Department of Education paperwork and Department of Education broadcasts that come directly to the superintendents. We meet with superintendents from Middlesex County. I meet with them every Wednesday. We have, to find out sort of what they're doing, how they're handling things. And it's been very valuable. But the directive that we take doesn't come from any article in the paper, anybody said. It's more directly from the Department of Ed.
And I think the folks in the viewership, whether you live in Piscataway Township or outside of our community, it's the rules that get promulgated out that you as the superintendent and the board members have to follow in order to implement, a thorough and efficient education.
Absolutely.
So, what has there been any facility changes that the students may notice when they come back, step foot in the various school?
You might notice maybe different doors you need to enter, different areas that buses might drop off, but no specific building or facility changes in the physicality of the buildings. Again, we are trying to get back to as much normalcy as we can, taking into consideration cleanliness, cleaning, social distancing, things like that.
So when you say social distancing, obviously the 6 is how. So just in my mind, like if you're in a say a grade school, middle school classroom with XYZ chairs, is that going to look like it was this past spring, or is that going to be set up differently?
So similar to what it looked like this past spring, aside from the numbers, and I'll get to that in a second. The trend in education was to get away from, in years past before the coronavirus, was to get away from the rows all facing forward and everybody sitting behind each other to allow for more collaboration between students and to see each other and things like that. Well, the directive has changed, right? Back to that. If you can't remain, and the directive now is 3 feet of social distance, if you can't remain 3 feet, you take extra precautions in other areas. Continuing to wear masks, cleaning in a certain way, keeping the desks in certain fashions so kids are behind each other and not facing each other, really, talking to each other, germs flying across, things like that.
And I guess we might as well go right to the crux. And it says before we came on the air, you and I were speaking about the mask, and obviously the governor and the Department of Health don't believe that there's going to be a mask mandate for the fall. However, they're only basing it on what's going on right now in July of 2021. You said 3 feet. If a child, especially they haven't come out with a vaccine yet for younger students, a child can still go ahead and wear a mask if the parent wants them to wear a mask.
Yeah, so we haven't made a decision whether masks are going to be mandatory or optional. Okay. And I'm holding off on my decision for that. I sent a letter to the parents and the families last week saying that. Not specific about masks, but just regular protocols. I'm really holding off because we've seen what happened in the last week with just the numbers of coronavirus cases in the state, in the county, and Piscataway. So we're holding off to see what happens. And the governor will make a statement that masks will be optional in schools, and the Department of Ed will say something. The American Association of Nursing
will say another.
This morning said they recommend they should be wearing them no matter what. So we look at all of the data, we look at all the information, and we'll make the decision again closer to when we get back in September.
I'm not, my own personal view is that if I had a child in the school system, and given the fact that there's not a vaccination option as of yet, there may be one in the fall, I would like to have my child at least wear a mask, as much as the pain in the neck the child might not want to.
Right.
But just to give it a little extra precaution because you don't know what's going on as it.
You know, and I've been saying this from the beginning, and maybe parents have heard me say this. We can't tell people how to feel about this, right? We can say what we think and what we hope and what the data suggests. There's just too many variables for me, right? And I don't disagree with you about myself, number one, and about my own kids. You know, students being less than 3 feet, a crowded classroom. If we're going to go back to full, you know, school 100%, the hallways, the cafeterias, the buses, things like that. It would just make some sense.
That's the whole idea, is because, you know, children tend to want to be together very close. It's just nature. So you would think that you would want to have them at least till some of them get vaccinated, or at least a substantial majority of them, you know, to at least wear masks for temporary purposes.
Yeah, so my plan is to continue to communicate with families and let them know, again, as we lead up to the middle of August, the end of August, and how the trends of these cases and recommendations from the state and the local government authorities really let us go. And a lot of the decisions that the Department of Ed or Department of Health or the governor, you know, came down to, well, whatever the district feels they need to do. And I have been very cautious about all of those decisions that I've had to make.
Okay, so we're going to get off the masks, and I'm sure that'll be a future discussion towards the end of August, early September. When a child steps into the school district, like food services, is that going to be fully operational?
Yeah, so fully operational. A little bit of different offerings, right? Not so many a la carte offerings.
Okay.
But some. So let me back up. As we went through this school year, the federal government, you know, very generously, you know, came to the school districts through the state and said all the meals, breakfast and lunch for anybody in any school-age children in Piscataway are free. Because understanding, you know, the challenges that families have with finances, and we've already been notified that will continue through the entire year of 21-22. So the food service will continue in that fashion, not being delivered to certain school locations because all the children will be expected to be in school, but everybody has the availability to get breakfast and lunch at no charge.
Okay, that's an interesting. I think it's a good concept.
Yeah, and but it will be again look a little normal, right? But maybe some different offerings to keep people a little bit as separate as we can.
Well, I'm not a mushroom fan, so if it has mushrooms, I'm not in favor of it.
No mushrooms,
Okay. What about athletic sports?
Yeah, so last year, as everybody knows, we didn't participate in fall sports. We participated in winter, and then they had a winter 2, and then they had a spring. We didn't participate in any middle school sports last year. This year, again, as we hope to approach this year as normal as possible, we are going to be full participants in all of those. Middle school, all fall sports in high school. So we're looking forward to give those kids those opportunities.
Well, I think that's great, at least for a health portion, you know, because the athletics does keep the students nice and trim.
Yeah, this year we feel we know more, right? As we did in the winter, we know more, we can control more, we have more experience in many different facets of dealing with, you know, any symptoms, any illness, any, you know, sicknesses like that, and precautions that we take. All our coaches are trained very well, our athletic directors, so we're really looking forward to getting those opportunities back.
Question, transportation.
So transportation will go back to what it looked like pre-coronavirus, back to normal. Through all of the guidance that we have from the state, the local government, the Department of Health, masks will be mandatory on buses because there's no way we could keep everybody 3 or 6 feet apart, right? But there will be normal transportation as you would have experienced it pre-coronavirus.
Well, that's good. Is there any last minute item you want to get in there?
You know, I started by saying thank you for your flexibility and understanding in the 2021 school year. And I look forward to the same communication and flexibility and understanding in this school year. Many of you know, you email or call my office. I get right back to people. I'm really looking forward to that communication as well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call your principal, to call the office or my office, and we'll be sure to to get you some answers.
I want to thank Dr. Frank Ranelli from the Superintendent of Piscataway School System stopping by. And I want to thank your staff and all the support staff and the teachers of all the schools within a district of what they've had to deal with over the last 18 months to 2 years,
A quick
and what they're
story.
going to have to deal with.
Yeah, quick
this
story.
year.
I know we're pressed for time, but one of my custodians was going into Wawa this morning, and he had his uniform on that said Piscataway Township Schools, and somebody without school-age kids stopped him and said, "Thank you for keeping the schools running." And they're wonderful. All our staff, our teachers, and I appreciate this opportunity to come and communicate to the township like this.
No, that's great. And thanks for coming back on.
दुनिया की हर उलझन में उलझा शक्ति है, लेकिन गुरुदेव का एक घर है जो हमें उसमें से उबार सकती है। इसलिए कहा गया है दुनिया का रश लुभाता मझधार में डुबाता दुनिया का रस लुभाता मझधार में डुबाता तेरा रस पुनी
Well, I want to welcome our viewership back to SHI Stadium here, and we're very fortunate enough to have one of our Piscataway residents here off-site to do an interview, and everybody knows the face in the state of New Jersey. We're here with the head coach of Rutgers football, Greg Schiano. Greg, nice to be back here in Piscataway.
It sure is, Mayor. This is home.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Sid. So right behind both Coach Schiano and myself is a empty SHI stadium here. And given the fact that you came back last year, coached in the middle of a pandemic, what was that like coaching when there was just family members for the players and maybe support staff in the stadium?
Yeah, it was really different, and not what you imagine when you accept the job and you start to picture what it's going to be like. But once the game started, I got to tell you, it was football, and you certainly missed the fans and the roar of the crowd and the home field advantage. That's what I'm looking forward to most.
Well, I have to laugh. So between watching the games on television at my house, I can hear the cannon going off or the announcer on the loudspeaker going, but you didn't hear the roar of the stadium right there. But, I agree with you. It's going to be great this season, welcoming the fans back to Piscataway. I think everybody's chomping at the bit to get back into the stadium to see their favorite team play. And I think what we're going to do is with all the 2020 distractions, how much has it meant looking forward for the fans being in the stands again, as we just mentioned about?
Well, I think, I know for us, it's critical. And what we need to have is what we built up to the first time we're here. We need it to be a home field advantage. SHI Stadium, we need our fans to be loud. We need them to be disruptive. They need to be the difference in those tight ball games. And I don't think fans truly understand how much of an impact they have on a football game, especially a college football game. As big and as strong as those kids are out there, they're still kids. And momentum in any sport is an unbelievable thing. College football, it may be tops.
Well, there's no substitute, obviously, when you have a home crowd cheering your favorite team on and rooting for them to get them up and the adrenaline going out there. What was it like going to how did other stadiums handle that? The same way, the protocols that were set up by the Big Ten?
Yeah, it really was. And it was the first game, you don't know what to expect. And it was eerie. We pulled onto Michigan State's campus. There was not a soul to be seen.
Wow.
You drive through the gates. You don't even think of that, right? You just see the stadium. But literally, there was no traffic. There was nobody. A couple deer running around on the street. That was about it.
Well, I take a look at what happened. It's just amazing that the University Athletic Department, as well as your coaching staff, last year were able to get that. You were able to play all the games that were scheduled, whereas a lot of the other teams within the league weren't able to do that. I mean, you credit that to a lot of the coaches and also a lot of the medical staff keeping an eye on the players.
Well, I think it starts with our medical staff. You hit it on the head. Dr. Burchard, he was unbelievable, and Dr. Kristofiak, those two guys, along with our head trainer, Dave McCune, they made it crystal clear to me what we needed to do and where we had to make some pivots along the way to stay safe. But that was the information, and I was the kind of the conduit. But the guys who made it happen were our players. They made incredible sacrifices, and our goal was to play every game on our schedule. Certainly we wanted to win them, but we wanted to be able to be involved in every game in our schedule.
And I think it's a credit to you and to the medical staff that the players bought in, because, being young adults, sometimes they don't necessarily want to listen to some rules that are being promulgated out that may not think is necessary. But the fact that you were able to instill that in the players and you were able to play every game that was scheduled, which I thought was incredible.
And as a new head coach, that was really a great tool for me to get to know the players.
Yeah.
Right? This is this added adversity, this layer that was added, a big layer that really showed me who loved the game of football.
Yeah.
Because the sacrifices that were necessary to be able to play, they were big sacrifices.
And I'm sure they were, because they couldn't necessarily have a total college life and as a football player as they normally would under normal circumstances.
Yeah, hardly. I'm not sure they had even a high school life.
Yeah.
To be real with you, it was football, practice, study. They saw their folks. They would stand on the field and talk to their folks up in the stands.
And couldn't meet with them after the game.
Right. So all the things that make a college football Saturday special weren't there. So they played for each other, and it was really cool to see them bond.
Well, it's definitely a credit to the players and the coaching staff. So you did one stint here at Rutgers University already, and you're back for your second go around. And what do you think has changed since the first time that you were here?
So much. I mean, just look at the medical school. That's number one, right? That's a game changer for any university. But then you just drive on Livingston campus. When I was here the first time, other than taking the guys recruits to a basketball game over there, we did not want to spend any time on that campus. Now, that is the crown jewel. I mean, beautiful new dormitories, buildings, and then head over to College Ave and all the stuff over there. So I think what Rutgers did in my time away is nothing short of miraculous.
Well, I think it's an evolving education institutions as a whole nationally are evolving to meet the changing times, and even the athletic departments and coaching staffs do the same thing in order to attract student athletes here to play at whatever university they're going.
Well, for sure. It's very competitive, like you're saying. And the best schools are chasing all the best students, and in our case, the best student athletes. But I really believe Rutgers is so well positioned now moving forward with everything that we have as a university, and to be in the great town of Piscataway, part of it in the great town of Piscataway, I think really is.
Actually, the funny thing is geographically, the university owns almost 4 square miles of our community. The city of New Brunswick's only 5.5 square miles. So for the general public, that gives you the type of footprint that the university has here in Piscataway.
But no one's counting, right?
No, nobody's counting except myself. But as an aside note, were there any changes in the coaching staff from your first year back to this coming season?
Nah, there really weren't. I really was excited about the group that we were able to put together. Not only the 10 position coaches, but the support staff. What Rutgers did is what really made the difference. Rutgers stepped up. And there were times in the first go-around where I really felt like we were in a heavyweight fight with one hand behind our back. This time, Rutgers stepped up. They gave us the funds and the resources to go hire top-flight people that are doing a really good job, as well as support staff. And, it's great because one of the things that is a benefit of that is we have so many of our former players on staff.
When I was just going to ask you that question, how critical is that to bring former players that played recently for you or other coaches here at the university to mentor the current athletes and players?
Well, I think it's really important the guys who played for us because they know our culture. And that, to me, is the single biggest job. Head coach who's taken over a program, you have to instill the culture throughout the program. The players are part of it, but staff, support staff within the university, who is and what are this program? What do we have here? And I thought our guys and our coaches did a great job of not only buying into the culture, but owning it.
Well, and that leads to another question about recruiting. Obviously New Jersey's a hotbed, and you, during your first stint here as coach, you made a point of that you wanted to build a wall around New Jersey for recruiting purposes, so not many of the good players would get poached from other teams anymore. Do you still feel that way, or are you taking a different tactic?
No, I always felt. See, I never said it. That was always a very popular thing to say. put a wall around.
So
New
there
Jersey.
was an urban myth out there.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's unrealistic.
Okay.
You got to look at the state of New Jersey. There's close to 9 million people in a not such a large area, right? So some kids are going to want to leave, and I get it. Our job is to make sure that the players that are a fit for Rutgers, not every other school, but for our program, that are in New Jersey and in New York, that they stay home. And that's what we need to make sure. What really got me and gets me still is if a Rutgers guy goes somewhere else.
Okay.
That's when it hurts.
So somebody that you and your recruiting staff perceive that would be a great fit here for the university and ends up taking a look at another university in Ultimate.
And going there. Yeah, that's the ones that really hurt. Because to me, again, you could be the greatest player in the world, but if you're not a cultural fit into what we do, it's constantly going to be like this, pushing and pulling. And that doesn't serve anyone well.
With your former players that are some of them now assistant coaches now, how's that helped in recruiting to see, hey, maybe if I don't end up going to the NFL, maybe I could be in a coaching, make it a profession out there. Do some of the players who want to prospectively maybe come to the university look in that respect?
I think so, but I think when guys are playing, they're not really very few are really thinking, I'm going to be a coach.
Okay.
But what I do think our former players do is they can speak to the experience of playing for me and for our coaching staff. Yeah. And that can't be underscored because it is such a large part of their life. Not only what we do on the football field, in the weight room, on the practice field, but all the policies as far as academics and how we handle that, social, how we handle that, our culture, right? And they can share the culture from having experienced it 4 or 5 years and say, hey, this is what it's like. And I want that. Like I tell our coaches in recruiting, be the same guy when you're recruiting them as you are when you coach them. Then you never have any problems. There's no misunderstanding. So I think that's very important. And who better to do that than young men that have gone through our program and know exactly what it's like.
Okay. Now, you've come out of spring practice back in April, May, which, by the way, was a very exciting game right there. Which players do you think have had most improvement over that time up until coming into the fall camp starting in August?
Well, there were some guys that were recognized, right? Tyreen Powell on defense. I think he's going to be a fabulous young player who he can grow and he's go as far as he wants to go. He certainly had a great spring. There's so many. I hate to even single guys out, but when I look at it, a guy like Holland Pierce, gigantic guy, right? Really talented lineman. He came to us. He was really heavy, overweight, and he set his mind to, I'm going to lose this weight and I'm going to become a college football player. And he did just that. So those two guys got recognized as the most improved, but we had a bunch.
Now, you also have the strengthening coach on staff, and I think that has a lot to do with whipping the players into physical shape, too.
There's no doubt. Jay Butler and his staff. Jay was with us all 11 years here at Rutgers, then was with me at Tampa, my time there. And when we came back, he was one of the first people we knew we had to have, and he and his staff are doing a great job. And again, that's what happens all off season that nobody sees. Now,
your teams have always been noted for being excel extremely well in special teams. What are you certain types of players you're looking for to be on special teams?
Our best players.
Yeah.
Now
that's a great answer.
We'll mix some young guys in there, but you look who's on our special team. We're going to play our best players because I think that's a great opportunity to out Rutgers people. And I do. I think that our guys believe in it. I think a big reason is I'm involved in every one of those meetings, every one of those on-field practice routines. When the head coach is all about special teams, I think the program takes on that flavor. And we've had success, so that certainly helps.
Now, let's very briefly talk about where you see the starters for both offense and defense. I know you've already committed publicly to the quarterback situation. It's just a question on who's going to be in backup roles. Do you want to briefly talk about the offense?
Well, there's a lot of decisions to be made. If you go by groups, the O-line, I'd say we have probably 9-10 guys that are all competing for 5 spots. And depending on who...
Well, that's actually a good thing for you.
Well, it wasn't that way for sure. You're right. That was a real point of weakness when we first arrived. So that, we have to see how it plays out. Yeah. But what we're looking for is the best 5. I think we have a deep running back situation that I'm very excited about. Our tight ends are getting better. Bo Melton at wide receiver is a great leader along with Shameen Jones. We have some young guys behind them, so they have to grow. And then, as you mentioned, the quarterback spot. Noah's our quarterback, and there's some great competition behind him, and we'll see who wins that. But I really like our personnel on offense, and we just need to get better.
And I thought with some of the special plays that were done last year, really caught some of the opposing teams off guard.
Well,
that's the whole idea.
Special plays are good when they work, and when they don't, But again, I think the key is that Sean Gleason and the offensive staff, they're not such special plays to our kids because we run them a bunch, and when it's called, it's just another play. Go execute it. And that to me is the key. Don't start doing all crazy stuff because there's a play that isn't seen very often. Just do your job, execute your job, and the play will work.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, you have some very good returning lettermen coming back. Who do you think is going to end up excelling on the defense?
Well, like you said, I think we have some really good players. Going group by group up front on the defensive line, we have some experience there, coupled with a lot of youth. And when I say a lot, we have a really young group up front. So some of those young guys are going to have to develop. I can't tell you who they are. Julius Turner's had a tremendous offseason. We're counting on him. Mike Tverdoff. I think we have some guys that have a chance to really have career years. But you got to go out and do it. And linebacker, 03, Fatakasi is a really a fine player. He's on every preseason watch list there is. And he needs to play his best football of his career this year, and that'll make us a good defense. And in the back end, there's some really good players. I think Christian Isian is really a fine safety. I think Trey Avery's really playing at an elite level at corner. So we need to put all the pieces together and then play complementary football, offense, defense, and then special teams.
Now, you as a coach and other coaches around the country, I guess when the NCAA changed their rules about if players can enter a portal to transfer, has that changed your thought process on actually picking up players or whether players are going to pick up and leave?
Well, you definitely have to keep your eye on the portal at all times because there's players for whatever reason become available. But you have to make sure they're, again, people grow sick and tired of hearing me saying it, but they have to be a cultural fit. Otherwise, they could be a disruption on your team because now you're talking about a guy who may or may not have already played at the Division I level. Now he walks in the door and has a little street cred. And if he is not a cultural fit, he could lead younger guys in the wrong direction. So we're very careful about who we bring, but I think we've done a very good job because I'm happy with the guys that we've got in the portal. As far as people leaving, I look at it like this. You treat them like your own kids. That's how I do it. And you know what? It doesn't always mean...
And not necessarily kids always agree with their parents.
That's right. So I explain that to them. But at the end of the day, if they know that I have their best interest and our assistant coaches and our staff have their best interest in mind, they can put up with a lot. And they'll allow us to push them hard. But if they think they're being used... they're
gone. Well, which leads to another question. University as a whole has always been academic accreditation, especially with the athletic department watching over the students with their education. How much has that continued to be a selling point for you when you go out to recruit?
Well, again, I think this is one of those things in a program that the academic structure and accountability is as strong as the head coach makes it. Because if the head coach doesn't value it, then the players aren't going to value it. Some will because they want to, that they're driven by that. But a lot of them, they'll just go play football. Our guys, I think, understand that this is college football. The college comes first. Doesn't mean that we have to put school first and football second. What I tell our guys is they're both number one. But video games got to be second or third or fourth. Social life, I got to go down there a little bit on the. And as long as our guys understand that, again, be real when you're recruiting. Tell them this is what I believe you're coming here to do. Is it? And if it is, great. You're going to have a great experience. Can you go out and have a social life? Sure. Can you play video games? Sure. But you got to manage that time. We call it the 1440. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. You got to manage that 1440. And if you don't, it'll manage you.
Well, that's a good thing because my youngest son, he has a tendency of being on the PlayStation at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I get it. So how has it, with the success in the academic side, how does that translate to performance on the field?
Well, I'm a big believer in, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if you're undisciplined in one area of your life, I think it's awfully hard to be disciplined in the other areas. You have to be, if you're not naturally talented maybe in your academic as long as you work hard and you have the right habits, you practice those habits, the habits of discipline, the habits of mental toughness, physical toughness, right? All those things, look at each situation that's a struggle as an opportunity to get more mentally and physically tough.
Now, the regular season obviously will be upon you in less than a month. Where do you see the competitiveness of the game? Obviously, the Big Ten East is probably arguably the toughest, conference in the country. How does that change your attitude, knowing that you're every day, every game, it's going to be you're potentially paying another top 20 team?
That's why we're here. That's why we love to do what we do. And it's our job, my job, and our staff and our players to make sure we're that top 20 team every year. And that's what we're going to do.
Now, I have to believe you have Ohio State coming into here, Piscataway, and Wisconsin, and some people in the media predicting to be in the championship, potential national championship game. Do the players really get pumped up when they go in and want to play a top 10 team? And I'm assuming they do.
Well, I think they certainly do. The key is they have to believe that they can win.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that's always been the case. I thought it was last year. I thought they legitimately believed that they could win. Now, we didn't, but they believed they could. And I think we learned lessons along the way. That, to me, you only fail if you're not learning and growing from the experience. Then you do fail. But if you lose, but you learn and grow from it, eventually you're going to go and get that job done. And it's going to be as a result of those quote unquote failures. Yeah. We talk about failing forward around here.
Well, after last season's record, everybody was, at least as me as a fan, I was happy the fact, not only did you win 3 games, but more importantly, 3 other games, you were in it with less than 7 points. So, you were there. It was, the expectations weren't that high, but you ended up, the fan base actually was believing in, hey, this team can go really far this year. What they accomplished in 2020.
Yeah. I always look at that. Our fans, our coaches, our players, like we could have.
Yeah.
We also could have lost those 3 games.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is 2 teams are going out there. We're trying to get the same thing, but only one can leave the stadium with it. Yeah. And, it's awfully hard to win in the Big Ten Conference, especially in the Big Ten East. And we just have to take each game one at a time. And I know that's coach speak, but I believe it. You put so much of yourself into a given week to get ready for a college football game that when you win, you should really celebrate the effort. And when you lose, you should mourn it because you spent all that time, energy, emotional, physical, mental energy to get ready. If it doesn't work out, you should mourn it. It should hurt.
Well, as we close out our segment here with Coach Schiano. I just want to ask, what did you miss while you're away from Piscataway coaching here?
Well, I tell you right now, I missed the great Italian food. That's number one.
I was just going to say, Did you miss having a good slice of pizza?
Oh, there's no doubt, right? There's nowhere better. We're spoiled.
Yeah.
And when you go live in other places around the country and travel a lot, you figure that out quickly. But I love the people in New Jersey, right? Yeah. If you're not from here, you probably don't understand. But it is a great place to be, a great place to grow up, and to be back in Piscataway, back in our old house, and just ready to go and really take a run at this thing at Rutgers. We couldn't be more excited.
Well, I'm glad that you're here back in Piscataway, Coach, and thank you for stopping by on Piscataway. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the viewership come the 2021 season that's upon us. We should have every seat in this stadium filled.
I'm counting on it, man.
Yeah, right there. And that'll be good for Piscataway and good for Rutgers University. So thank you, Coach, for coming on Piscataway.
Thank you.
And I want to close out the show right there. We're going to have clips from the rodeo as we lead the credits. And let's go, RU.